Let us put our palms together. We respectfully invite Jiahhu Shifu to start the class. 3 half bows to Jiahhu Shifu.
1 half bow to the Buddha.
Ami Tuofu.
Okay, everyone. Very happy to see all of you here online with our first class on the topic of 100 Dharmas. Let us begin with a few minutes of meditation. Okay? We begin the class with some meditation to quiet our minds and clear our minds. We can practice mindfulness of the breathing. Now, there are different ways to practice mindfulness of breathing. Today, let us practice the direct experiencing of the breathing. That means we use our knowing mind. We simply become aware of the breathing without counting the breath, but simply be aware each moment and focus on the breathing. What we called breathing is actually an ongoing experience of air gathering and going into our nose and into our body, spreading in our body. And after a few seconds, we breathe out, which means the air mostly carbon dioxide and nitrogen going out through our nose. So every moment we simply experience this. Our attention is on this air getting in and out of our body. We don't need to think about it, just being aware. The mind is in the present moment, each moment. Okay, let us put our palms together and recite the sutra opening gatha. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million kalpas. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. Okay, now let us start the class.
今天没有看到您的画面，要分享。
不要，我 share screen 上不是有吗？
哦，OK，有了，不好意思。
Okay. So this is the beginning of the new English Buddhism class called 100 Dharmas. Now you can all hear, all see the share screen with my notes, right? If there's a problem, please notify the host or say in the chat box and the host will notify me, okay? Otherwise, please keep your microphone muted so as not to interrupt the class. So first of all, Happy New Year 2026. It's auspicious to begin our new year with a half-day meditation, which we conducted a few days ago. We also started we'll continue with the weekly Sunday meditations. For the last few months, Shifu was traveling outside the country, and so we've been replaying. Okay, even if the words seem a little bit small, don't worry about it. I hope that you don't really have to read as we do the class. Okay, so the notes is available for everyone. We have sent the links to these notes to all those who have registered. And we will put the link on our website, so those who have not registered for the class or you want to review it on the YouTube, you can know where to find the notes. I want to make sure that the YouTube is streaming now, right? 那个 YouTube 有在播放嘛哈？
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's start again. So, what is this 100 Dharma text? Formally, it's called the Shastra on the door to understanding the 100 Dharmas. A Shastra means a treatise, a paper, a treatise to explain the 100 Dharmas. The 100 Dharmas are a Buddhist way of classifying everything in the universe. So it's not just Charles Darwin or the scientists want to classify everything. The Buddhists, or a subset of the Buddhists, also like to do that too. But when we do that, the focus is not on the physical world. So in science, we have thousands and thousands, maybe millions of species, really detailed classification. In the Buddhist view, the 100 Dharmas, which includes everything, only 11 are related to the physical world. And most of the others are related to the mind. So you can actually think of the 100 Dharmas as a periodic table of our consciousness, of our mind. And this 100 Dharmas is done by the an important Buddhist school called the Yogacara school. The Yogacara school, in our notes, we do have an introduction to Yogacara. It's one of the two major doctrinal schools, Mahayana doctrinal schools from India. One is Yogacara, one is Madhyamaka. And previously, last year, when we had a class on the Heart Sutra that belonged to the Madhyamaka school, talking about emptiness. And the Yogacara school focused a lot on analysis of consciousness. Although they both have the same focus, which is by understanding the psychology or the mental states, that's the Yogacara school, or by understanding the delusions and eliminating the delusions, we can achieve complete enlightenment. We can become fully awakened like the Buddha. So there are different approaches, and they are quite different in character, which is interesting and I think very useful, at least to gain a foundational knowledge of the Yogacara school, to help us when we meditate to understand our mind and what's going on in our mind better. Okay, so Yogacara means the practitioner, chara, the practitioner of yoga. Now, yoga in the traditional sense is not what we have come to know today as a soft exercise to gain health. Yoga traditionally means a serious spiritual practice, which may involve the physical exercises as well. Right? So it's actually a spiritual tradition. Well, different kinds of spiritual tradition. In the Buddhism, then Yogacara, or the practitioner of the yoga, means the practitioner who focuses on meditation to achieve enlightenment. But we know that every Buddhist school should focus on meditation. So how is Yogacara different? So Yogacara has this characteristic of analyzing different states of mind in great detail. So the Hundred Dharma text is a short text that lists the 100 Dharmas in a very structured way, very systematic way. And so it is an introductory text to understand our mind, right? Let us look at the text. It's a very short text. Let's see, only a few hundred words. I'm going to read it for you now. You can also read in your mind silently with me. So the Mahayana Shastra on the door to understanding the 100 Dharmas. It was composed by Vasu Bandhu, a great Buddhist master in India, in Sanskrit. Was translated into Chinese by the great master Xuanzang, who went to India and stayed there for 17 years, becoming a great master himself, and returning to China. And he spent the last 20 or so years devoted to translating the Sanskrit text into Chinese. And the English translation and the notes that you see here are by myself. First version was by the Zhongtai Translation Committee, which we done a few years ago. And I revised it a few times. And also for this class too, right? So the text itself begins with this. As the world honored one has said, all dharmas are devoid of self. What are all dharmas? And what is devoid of self? All dharmas are summarized into 5 classes. 1. Mind dharmas. 2. Mind-associated dharmas. 3. Form dharmas. 4. Mind-dissociated dharmas. 5. Unconditioned dharmas. The order is such because those in the first class are supreme, the second are concomitant with the first, the third are projections manifested by the first 2. The fourth are based on but distinct from the first 3, and the fifth are revealed by the previous 4. The first Mind Dharmas class comprises 8 kinds of consciousness. 1. Eye consciousness. 2. Ear consciousness. 3. Nose consciousness. 4. Tongue consciousness. 5. Body consciousness. 6. Mind consciousness. 7. Manas consciousness. 8. Alaya consciousness. The second mind-associated class comprises 51 mental factors divided into 6 groups. 1. 5 universally active factors. 2. 5 specific factors. 3. 11 wholesome factors. 4. 6 primary afflictions. 5. 20 secondary afflictions. 6. 4 intermediate, indeterminate factors. The 5 universally active factors are attention, contact, feeling, conception, and volition. The 5 specific factors are desire, resolve, mindfulness, samadhi, and discernment. The 11 wholesome factors are faith, vigor, shame, embarrassment, non-greed, non-anger, non-ignorance, serenity, vigilance, equanimity, and non-harmfulness. The 6 primary afflictions are greed, anger, arrogance, ignorance, doubt, and false views. The 20 secondary afflictions are wrath, hatred, acrimony, concealment, deceit, guile, conceit, malice, envy, stinginess, lack of conscience, shamelessness, lack of faith, indolence, heedlessness, torpor, restlessness, unmindfulness, delusion, and distraction. The 4 indeterminate factors are sleep, remorse, inspection, and investigation. The third form class comprises 11 dharmas: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. Form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental form. The fourth mind-dissociated class comprises 24 dharmas: acquisition, life faculty, commonality, distinctness of beings, thoughtlessness absorption, cessation absorption, thoughtless absorption, cessation absorption, fruit of thoughtless absorption, names, sentences, syllables, birth, abidance, aging, impermanence, flux, causal distinctions, correlations, speed, sequence, time, space, number, compatibility, incompatibility. The fifth, unconditioned class, comprises 6 dharmas: empty space cessation, cessation through discernment, cessation without discernment, imperturbable cessation, cessation of conception and feeling, and true suchness. Devoid of self refers to sentient beings are devoid of self, and dharmas are devoid of self. Okay, so one interesting thing you may observe immediately is that this text doesn't explain anything, right? It just lists the 100 dharmas. So this is one of the tricky things about this text. It was composed by Vasubandhu, 2 of the brothers, the younger of the 2 brothers from India, that are the founders of the Yogacara school. So they are great masters, very, very knowledgeable. And Vasubandhu, he composed many foundational texts on the Yogacara philosophy. And he has a special way of doing his texts. They are very terse, very, very terse. If he can use one less word, he will. And as a result, his texts are a little bit hard to read. It takes a lot of thinking. And also, the text itself, even though it just seems like a big list or several lists, they are done in a very structured way. All right, so let's have an overview of what's going on here. So all dharmas, not capitalized dharmas, means everything. It could be something physical like a tree, like a cup, like your body. It could be mental, like an idea, a feeling, stress, anger, happiness, joy. So it could be physical, mental. It could even be not real, something that you created, like fantasy, right? Imaginary things. They are also dharmas. So they are everything. Okay. So all dharmas means everything in the world, everything in the universe. So now it's a huge task to try to classify them, right? Why do we want to classify them? Because we want to understand them. We want to understand the world. But actually, when we say we want to understand the world in Buddhism, it serves an important purpose. We want to understand the world enough so that we can become enlightened, so we can be free from our suffering. We can be truly happy. We can be liberated. We can become fully awakened. Okay, we have great wisdom. So therefore, our classification is not so keen on the physical world distinctions, but we are very interested in how the mind works, right? So we look at these all dharmas. On the top level, there are 5 classes of dharmas. 1, mind dharmas, and they consist of the 8 consciousness. So what they are the general mental functions, or you may think of them as foundational mental functions. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, these are the 5 senses. And number 6 is mind consciousness, which is what in the Western world we normally just call consciousness. So everything you can think of normally associated with your consciousness, like thinking, feeling, liking something, disliking something, having a good thought, a wholesome thought, having a nasty thought, an unwholesome thought, all of that, or an analysis, analyzing, examining, observing, all of those mental functions they are associated with the number 6 consciousness or mind consciousness. Sometimes we also call it the 6th consciousness. So number 6 is the most powerful. And that's what we're going to spend most of our time on. Now, interestingly, there's a 7th consciousness called the Manas consciousness, and the 8th consciousness called the Alaya consciousness or storehouse consciousness, right? So these are something unique in the Yogacara school in its analysis of the mind. Very briefly, the 7th consciousness or the Manas consciousness does only one thing. It creates a false self, a false idea of who I am, and hold on to it. Keep on thinking that this is I. Okay, so it's a very subtle thing, a clinging to the identity of the self. So that's the Manas consciousness. We'll talk more about this in the next class. And number 8, the 8th consciousness or the Alaya consciousness is also called a storehouse. What that means is, or warehouse. What that means is that every single one of our experiences are stored in the Alaya consciousness. So our past experiences are never really forgotten. They are shot into this Alaya consciousness. But just like we have a lot of things in our warehouse and then we forget what's in there, what's in it, we also forget a lot of our experiences. Now, this also includes experiences from previous lives, from beginningless time. So every single lifetime, all the experiences are in the Alaya consciousness. And that has very interesting implications. So you can think about that, all right? Now, if you don't want to believe that there is a past life or future life, that's okay. It's all right. I don't care. But just, just try to understand as the class goes on, right? So the Alaya consciousness, you can think of it as all your past experiences in this life is stored in there. And that's why it is possible to recall everything that you ever experienced. But we forget most of them. Why? Because we are not so mindful. Our mind is not so clear. And that's because the 7th consciousness is holding on to the self, the false self, the ego self. And because of that focus, we are always self-centered most of the time. And that narrow focus makes us forget a lot of things or have a mistaken perception of a lot of experiences that is happening in our life. Okay. All right, so that's the first class, the Mind Dharma. They are compared to like a king. So they are like mind king. They are the king of your land, that is your life. And the second class, the mind associated dharmas, they are like the ministers that carry out the king's duties. What the king wants to do something, wants to perform some action, then they activate these mind associated dharmas. So there are 51 of them. This is the biggest class. And we have just seen in the second class, there are 6 groups of them. Some are universally active. That means in every single experience of your life, these 5 mental factors or mental states are there. Attention, contact, feeling, conception, and volition. So we'll look into that in the third and the fourth class, all right? And there's 5 specific factors. They specific means that they don't appear all the time. They only appear in special situations as needed. The 11 wholesome factors, they are sort of like a summary of all the wholesome state of mind, good state of mind. Wholesome means that they lead to good karma. Okay? And they are 26. Half of these 51 states are afflictions or bad mental states, unwholesome mental states, which means that when we carry out these thoughts, we create bad karma. Okay? And so the 26 are 6 primary afflictions: greed, anger, arrogance, ignorance, doubt, and false views. And from them, they specialize into various different kinds, or they combine, like greed and anger can combine, greed and ignorance can combine, or greed and arrogance can combine into more specific mental states. So there are the 20 exemplary representative afflictions. Okay, here. And finally, there are 4 indeterminate factors: sleep, remorse, inspection, and investigation. That means these 4 are not necessarily good or bad, but depends on how you use it. If you use it in a good way to work with the wholesome factors, they become very useful. If you use it in conjunction with the afflictions, the unwholesome mental factors, then they become an agent for creating a bad karma. Okay, so for example, sleep is good when you're really tired and you need to, recover and heal. But then you sleep too much, you become lazy. So it can be associated with the wholesome or unwholesome factors. All right. All right. The third class are the physical world, or dharmas associated with the physical world. All right. So they are eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, the 5 senses, and the object of your 5 senses: form, sound, smell, taste, touch. So we heard about this in the Heart Sutra, right? And what is mental form? Mental form is when your eyes perceive the objects. When you hear sound, they make an impression. So if you close your eyes, you think of spinach. That is a mental form. Your idea of spinach, which is a form, but it's a mental form, right? Okay, and the fourth class is also very interesting. So the mind-dissociated class, they are not directly mental states, not like greed or joy. And they are not physical. They're not physical like sound or mountain or water, right? But they are based on the first 3 classes, so we created these 24 mental mind-dissociated states. In other words, they are concepts. They are concepts in our mind because of our experience with the consciousness, the mental factors, and the physical world. All right. So now, very quickly, let's look at some of the interesting ones, like space and time. So here in Buddhism, we always had the idea that space and time are not real. They are mentally created based on our experience of our sense and sense objects. Okay? And this is where it crosses with or resonates with quantum physics. Name, sentence, syllables associated with our language, right? Birth and death. Birth and death are also concepts. So isn't that interesting? All right. So finally, the fifth class is unconditioned state, unconditioned class. Now, these terms probably makes no sense to most of you right now. So we'll explain them at the end of this course. But let's look at this paragraph here. The order of these five classes, they are very carefully structured. The order is such that those in the first class are supreme. So the mind dharmas are the 8 types of consciousness. Supreme means that they are the most powerful in our life. So what determines the quality of your life? What determines that you enjoy your life or you hate your life, you are suffering or you are happy, or you are filled with hope, or you can face the challenges or not. So these are the supreme. They're very powerful. So we need to understand them well. But to understand them well, we need to understand their specific functions, or the ministers they call up to do their work. So that's why the second are concomitant, meaning that they work with. Like you have a CEO of a company. So the CEO makes the commands, but then you gotta have the lower level managers to do the work for you, right? To make the work happen. So they have to work together, right? So these are the 51 mental factors. So the first 2 classes are entirely involved with the mind and the consciousness. The third are projections manifested by the 2. So this is interesting. Remember, the third class are the form, sound, smell, taste, what we perceive. Now, people who are not familiar with Buddhism may think that, we see the mountains, right? So mountains is something out there real. Rivers, water, they are real. They are part of the external world. But what this text is saying is that the form, dharmas, are projections manifested by your consciousness and your mental factors. In other words, whatever you perceive as the external world, whether it's form or sound or smell, taste, these are projections manifested or created by your mind. So that's why the Yogacara school is also called the Consciousness-Only School. There's only consciousness and specific functions, mental factors of the consciousness. Everything in the world is either the consciousness or created by the consciousness. Okay? Now, whether you believe that or not, it's okay. Let's just go on. As we continue to study this text, we'll hopefully begin to see how they explain this. All right, so the fourth class are based on, but distinct from, the first 3. So we just explained that they are the concepts based on the first 3 classes. And the fifth are revealed by the previous 4. The fifth class are the unconditioned dharmas. Now, unconditioned means what we try to realize, what we try to achieve, or you can say this is the ultimate reality or the ultimate truth. But unfortunately, you cannot really explain the ultimate truth. You can only explain what is not the ultimate truth. So they are revealed by the previous 4. In other words, let us study our mind, our consciousness. Let us study our mental states, the the range of ideas and feelings and how we feel and what we experience. But let us understand them correctly. Now, ordinary people or mundane people, people who suffer, who go through birth and death endlessly, who are unawakened, they realize that they have consciousness, they realize that they have these mental factors, they see the outside world, but they don't see them clearly, they don't see them truthfully. That's the problem. So as we study the consciousness and we study the mental factors, we want to understand from an awakened perspective as taught by the Buddha and these Yogacara masters. All right? And also the mind dissociate the concepts. See, we didn't know that time and space are concepts. If we do, we get closer to awakening, to the truth. Right? We didn't know that gain or loss, gaining something, possessing something, and losing something, which causes a lot of, emotions. They are also concepts. They're not real. They're concepts. When we understand these, how they are created based on our consciousness and how we perceive the world and its objects, when we understand their truth, or when we understand why we did not see them clearly or truthfully. So when we understand the 4 previous classes, conditioned dharmas, condition means that they only exist because of certain conditions coming together. And when the conditions or the factors fall apart, then they cease. So they're birth and death. They are impermanent. Everything in the first 4 classes are impermanent. So when we say everything is permanent, that's what we mean. The conditioned dharmas. Your mind, your feelings, your ideas, your body, and the world that we perceive. They are all conditioned, they are all impermanent. They all come together because of certain necessary conditions, and therefore they don't have their own self nature or self-identity. So when we understand, in other words, when we understand our body and our mind, our consciousness, our concepts, our mental states, and the world correctly, then we achieve the awakening. We understand this unconditioned Dharma. We understand the ultimate truth. So that's why the 5th class are revealed by the previous 4. All right? So that is an overview of this text. And you see a special way of writing a paper. Some of these Buddhist masters, they are really masters of logical reasoning and organization, structure. So the layout itself, even though they are just a bunch of lists, the layout itself is very logical. And the layout, the structure itself, already explain a lot without explicitly using the words. Already explain a lot about the relationship between the different dharmas, the different class of dharmas, right? So here is the Chinese original from which we translated from. Now, most of these Buddhist sutras or texts are translated from Chinese because the Sanskrit is lost. Most of the Sanskrit original are lost because Buddhism disappeared from India. more than 1,000 years ago, unfortunately. Anyway, so you can see Chinese language is very terse. It's very short. Yeah? Whereas it took maybe 2 pages. You only took half a page here. It means that each term in Chinese contains a lot of information, which is kind of like how Vasubandhu liked to construct his papers. Yeah. All right, so let's look at the main premise, introduction to this Yogacara school, or the Consciousness-Only School. Yeah. So I think I already explained most of it. So Yogacara is a profound system for analyzing the mind, which is, you can think of it as theory or principle. Now, such insights, such knowledge is not just for philosophy, not just for intellectual satisfaction. It is for practice. So the insights we gain from learning the 100 Dharmas or future Yogacara text are used to contemplate, in contemplation, to realize the ultimate truth. In other words, these insights help us in our meditation, in our daily practice, toward enlightenment. Okay? So some people call it contemplative psychology. So psychology, in the sense that it analyzes the mind, the consciousness. And it's contemplative, is for meditation. Although the system is completely different from Western psychology, so it developed completely independently, or shall we say, a couple thousand years earlier, right? It seeks to explain how our experience of a seemingly external world is actually a projection of our own consciousness, and also by deconstructing the mind into its constituent parts, as seen in the 100 Dharmas. Practitioners, you and I, can trace the roots of suffering back to our deep-seated wrongful perspectives and the habits of the ego. Okay, so there are we listed 3 core principles or features of the Yogacara school. One is the alaya consciousness, the storehouse consciousness, which we'll explain. We'll talk about next class. And the 3 natures. Very quickly, what are the 3 natures? Yogacaras teach that we perceive reality in 3 ways: the imagined nature, the false sense of permanent self, the external reality. So the imagined nature. For example, when you make $1,000, that's a lot of money. You think that this external fixed identity or characteristics to that $1,000. You think it's real. That's called imagined nature. The nature of $1,000 is not what ordinary people think. It's not, there's no internal identity. Rather, it's dependent. So the second is the dependent nature. In other words, what $1,000 actually mean depend on where you use it, how you use it, what you use it for. It depends on the environment, the conditions, the situation, how you use it or how you earned it, right? If you earned it properly, if you earned $1,000 properly and use it in a way that benefits others, then you can create a lot of good karma with it. If you earned it in a not so legal way, and you use it to benefit yourself at the cost of other people's well-being, then you can create really bad karma with it. So the nature of $1,000 is dependent. And then there's the perfect nature, the true nature, the true suchness, which is understood by understanding the imagined nature and dependent nature. So we will talk about the three natures during the course when we talk about the 100 Dharmas, all right? And another important feature of the Yogacara school is the transformation of consciousness. So as an ordinary person, we use our consciousness, we use our mind in many, many ways. Sometimes we're tempted to create bad karma, even though we perceive it as pleasurable, right? Sometimes we want to create good karma, we want to benefit others. Yeah? So transformation of consciousness means that we get rid of the delusion or misperception of what my consciousness is, what my mental factors do, and what kind of karma they create, how related to my future, by removing the delusion, the getting rid of the imagined nature that we perceive. We understand the interdependentness of all these dharmas. We realize the emptiness of this inherent nature. Then we can become awakened. We can lead. This can lead to a more fruitful and joyful life, a bright future. Yeah, we can learn to be wise and deal with all the challenges in life. That is through the process of transformation of consciousness, right? All right, a little bit about the author, Vasubandhu. So Vasubandhu is the younger of two brothers. His older brother, Asanka. These two brothers are the first-class Buddhist masters, kind of like Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna single-handedly founded the other doctrinal school, the Madhyamaka school. And these two brothers together, they are responsible for laying all the foundations of the Yogacara school. Okay. Now, Asanka lived around the 4th century CE. He can be called the actual founder of the school. According to our records or tradition, he spent many, many years in deep meditation, eventually ascended to the Tushita heaven, one of the heavens above, and where he received direct teaching from the Maitreya Bodhisattva. Okay, Maitreya Bodhisattva, Lila Pusa. He is the future Buddha. So he has completed most of his cultivation. He's very close to becoming a Buddha. He will be the future Buddha in this world. So he's currently living in the Tushita heaven, one of the celestial planes. Now, through deep meditation, Asanka is said to have been able to go to that heaven and receive the Yogacara style teaching or the detailed analysis of the mind, a system of analyzing our consciousness from Maitreya. And as a result, he composed many most important works like Yogacara Bhumi, which is 100 scrolls, 100 fascicles, a huge piece of work, and others. Now, he says that these works are not created by himself, but just simply his own retelling of the teaching from Maitreya, so he doesn't take credit for some of these work. Right? A good example of selflessness. Anyway, from a scholarly or academic point of view, our Sangha is the author of those great works. Right? So he provided the vast systematic framework for the path of Bodhisattva and the revolutionary mapping of the 8 types of consciousness, dividing the very complex and profound thing called our mind into this 8 types of consciousness and the associated mental factors. Now, Vasubandhu, as a younger brother, initially was on a different path. He was very involved in the Theravada Buddhism. In other words, he didn't believe in Mahayana. Theravada is the Buddhist path. Sometimes we used to call it a small vehicle, although we don't use that word anymore. It is primarily involved with liberating oneself, achieving arhathood, liberating yourself from the transmigration of the triple realm, right? Ending birth and death, achieving nirvana. And that's the primary goal. The primary goal is not to attain Buddhahood. The Mahayana schools in Buddhism, their goal is to achieve Buddhahood. So we don't want you to stop at nirvana. We want you to go all the way, to do all this work of liberating all sentient beings, and this great, compassion, unconditioned compassion to help all sentient beings to become Buddha. Right? So that's the Mahayana school. So Vasubandhu was not interested in Mahayana school at first. He thought, that is bogus. Buddha didn't teach those Mahayana scriptures. I only believe in the Theravada teachings, the Agama Sutras or the Nikaya Sutras. Okay. Now, the older brother Asanga tried in many ways to convince his younger brother, you should become a Mahayana Buddhist. This is the true teaching, the complete teaching. He was not interested. And Vasubandhu, he created a very important, probably the most important work in Theravada treatise called the Abhidhammakosa. Now, this was translated also by Master Xuanzang into Chinese and became the reference, the standard reference for all of the Theravada teaching. It's a big piece of work, but it is very condensed and very well organized in the same style as this text, 100 times longer. All right. Now, so one day his older brother Asanga thought of a trick. So he sent a letter to Vasubandhu. He said, "Oh, my dear brother, I am dying. I'm in my last days. So please come see your brother. Otherwise you may never see me again." So when Vasubandhu heard this, he immediately made a trip to go to Asanga. And when he arrived, he saw that Asanga was lying in his bed, looking very sick. So he said, "Oh, dear brother, what can I do for you?" Well, as Buddhists, they both know that death is inevitable, right? At least in this present form of body. Now, so we should not be sad, but as a brother, as family, we'll do what we can. So, dear brother, what can I do for you before you pass away? Asanga said, oh, I really wanted to listen. Somebody read the Avatamsaka Sutra to me, Huayan Jing. I really want to hear this teaching. I miss this teaching so much, but I'm too sick to read it myself. So please read it for me. Now, you know that Vasubandhu at this point, he did not believe in Mahayana Sutras, but it was his brother's last wish. So he started reading the Avatamsaka Sutra to his brother. And as he read, the Avatamsaka is also a very big scripture. It probably take a couple months to read. So he read and read and read. As he was reading, Vasubandhu is incredibly intelligent, just like his brother, right? So he read and read and read. He contemplated. His mind changed from rejecting the teaching to fully embracing the teaching. So finally, somewhere, in the middle through his reading to his brother, the Avatamsaka Sutra, he said, brother, I was wrong to not believe in the Mahayana Sutras. This is indeed the full scope of the Buddha's wisdom. I am so regretful for saying previously that these are not real scriptures, real sutras. I've committed such terrible evil karma by doing this and turning people away from Mahayana. I don't know of any way to repent. So I've made a decision to cut off my tongue, so I will never speak again. Now, Sangha said, no, my brother. There's a better way to repent. So Vasubandhu said, what could I do? Sangha says, you could teach Mahayana to people. And Vasubandhu agreed. So for the rest of his life, he devoted his energies to studying and teaching the Mahayana. And he continued his brother's lineage or foundation to write some very important text to help explain the Yogacara. Okay, so this 100 Dharma was one of such texts. Now, of course, then Asanga told his younger brother, actually, I was not really dying. This is my expedient means, a little white lie to convert you to Mahayana. Okay, so that's a famous story between the two brothers. So Vasubandhu, he authored some foundational manuals of the school, including the 30 verses and the 20 verses and the 100 Dharmas. So it will be a little bit difficult to study the 30 verses, which covers the full range of the Yogacara teaching in his typical, very expertly structured way. And it would take me at least 2 years to teach that. So let's focus on the 100 Dharma first, okay? Together, their legacy represents the pinnacle of Buddhist psychological analysis, providing the philosophical map used by the Chan school, Tiantai, a Chinese school, and Vajrayana tradition that followed. So there are three major Mahayana schools in India. The first was Madhyamaka, created by Nagarjuna, and the second is Yogacara, created by these two brothers, and then the Vajrayana practice. The Vajrayana practice has the first two as doctrinal or philosophical foundations. Okay, and when these came to China, the Chinese Buddhism developed that into 8 Mahayana schools. Okay. Okay, so that is an overall top level explanation of the overview of the 100 Dharmas. Okay, let's open for a few minutes for questions. Are there any questions so far? If not, then Shifu will go on. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand or make a mark. Our host will open you up. Does it sound hard? Or does it sound easy? If it sounds hard, put a +1 in the chat box. If it sounds easy, put a 0 in the chat box. Let's see, what do you think? Let's see, where's the chat box? Okay, 3 people say hard, 1 person say not hard. Okay, 3 to 1. That's it? Another say not so hard. Another say so far so good. All right, it's 3 to 3 now. Okay. Well, it's probably too early to make a judgment, right? Since this is just an overview. It does sound complex, yeah? It is quite sophisticated, but hopefully we can make it, Shifu will try to make it quite reasonable. And also, hopefully you can connect it with your daily life. So let us now look at the exercises for this class, for this first class. And there are 3 parts. One is thinking or internalizing. We listen to a teaching, we want to think about it, we want to contemplate on it, we want to internalize the knowledge. Okay. The second part is Buddhist meditation. How does what we learn today can become part of our meditation practice? And 3, daily application. Okay. So first question. Let's see. Why is it useful to study the 100 Dharmas? Why is it useful? What are the 5 classes of our Dharmas according to Gasu Ben do? All right, so I already explained that. So you can think about it. What? Let's not answer right now.
Your frogs.
Maybe there's lots of water down there.
It seems so cold.
Okay, please turn off your microphone for now. Until we open for discussion, okay? So this is for you to own, to review for yourself. Number 2, which benefits you hope to gain from participating in the class? Write them down in your cultivation journal and check on these goals periodically. So based on what we have talked about today and in the next few classes to come, think about what you hope to gain from this class, what benefit it can give you. Right? Having a clear set of goals will help us focus on our learning and getting the maximum out of our class, out of this class. Okay. So write it down in your cultivation journal. I'm encouraging that every one of you keep a cultivation journal. It could be a real notebook. It could be digital on your cell phone or your computer. And put down a little bit of something every evening before you go to sleep. So which serves as a way to reflect on your day. Write down a few sentences. Doesn't have to be long. Write down your things that bothers you. Write down your insights from your day or from your Buddha study or from your meditation. Okay, so write down something, a little bit of something every day in your cultivation journal. So today, write down what you hope to gain from participating in this class. All right, number 3, deconstructing the self. Contemplate the metaphor of the periodic table of the mind. So Shifu will say, the 100 Dharmas are like a periodic table of your mind, especially the first class and the second class and the fourth class. Yeah. So is the 51 mental states, the second class, help us, just looking at the list itself, the wholesome dharmas, the unwholesome dharmas, and the attention, the feeling and concept can help us begin to have a way to look at our thoughts. We have so many kinds of thoughts. So this system helps us examine our thoughts and make it a little bit more solid, right? A way to understand ourselves and what kind of thoughts we have. So contemplate the metaphor of the periodic table of the mind. Reflect on a simple recent experience like drinking tea, cleaning the floor, simply walking. Start with a simple experience and try to see which part of the event belong to one of the 5 classes. Which part of this experience? So Shifu will lead you through one example, okay? And let us look at another example together. All right, so let's say you're drinking tea or drinking coffee. In this experience, making coffee or making tea, putting in the cup, bring it to your mouth, drinking it. This very simple experience. Which of the 5 classes is involved? Does it involve the form dharmas? Does it involve form or physical things, physical objects? Of course it does, right? There is the coffee or the tea leaves themselves. Yeah? So, and you perceive the tea leaves through your eyes and through your smell. And when you make the tea, through your tongue, right? So these are the form dharmas, right? There's a physical aspect. Heating up the water and steeping the tea, right? Brewing the coffee. Okay, so these are the physical aspects involved, the 3rd class. What about your consciousness? Which part of your 8 consciousness are involved? Does it involve your eyes? Of course it does. It involves your eyes. Does it involve your hearing? Not so much. But there is, right? If you're boiling the water, you probably use your hearing as well. You hear that the water is boiling. Yeah. And then you do hear the sound when you pour the water. That helps in judging how much water, right? So there's eye, there's ear, and there's form, and there's sound. Does it involve the nose? Yeah, it does. Yeah. When we drink tea, we usually, formally in the tea ceremony, we usually bring the teacup, putting it under our nose and smelling it first. That was the first part of the appreciation of the tea. Yeah. And then you taste it a little bit. So to involve the nose and the tongue. Does it involve the body? Yes, it does, right? You use your hand to make the tea and bring the cup to your mouth. So it actually involves all five senses and all five sense organs. Yeah, and the mental factor. Yeah. So what is the experience of drinking the tea? So some people say, well, this has kind of a bitter note, a floral note. It's light, or it's pretty strong. So these are the mental impression of what the taste or the experience is like. So that's involved mental factors. All 11 mental form factors, form dharmas are involved. Right? So it involves the first 5 consciousness, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. Does it involve the 6th consciousness? Of course it does. The 6th consciousness is involving 99% or 98% of our everyday experiences. Yeah? When you fall asleep, you're going to very deep sleep. That is when your 6th consciousness temporarily stops. Or if somebody falls into coma, that's when the 6th consciousness temporarily stops. But most of the time, even including when you're dreaming, your 6th consciousness is active. So in drinking tea, the 6th consciousness is the most important part. It defines your experience, right? Okay, so now it will be interesting to check the 51 mental factors and see which ones were involved in drinking tea. Well, let's take a look. Quickly. Where's the list? Oh, there. Okay, so does it involve attention? Yes, it does. Does it involve contact? Yes. When your hand touches the cup, when the tea touches your tongue, that's contact. Does it involve feeling? Of course. Does it involve conception? Yes. The tea is a concept. And volition, will. So you want to drink tea. You want to make some tea. You want to drink more or less. You want to drink 1 cup or 2 cups. That's volition. So it involves all the universal factors, right? The 5 specific, is there desire? Yeah, in this case, there is a desire, probably. Or maybe not. Maybe somebody just handed you the tea and you didn't really have a desire, but out of good manners, you drink it. So maybe there is desire, maybe there is not. Okay, so you can look at these. Do you drink your tea mindfully? If you drink your tea mindfully, then that becomes a different experience. If you drink your tea without mindfulness, then it is less of experience. If you drink your tea with mindfulness, fully in the present moment, that's the idea of the tea ceremony, right? Did you know that tea ceremony originated from a Chinese Buddhist monastery about 1600 years ago? Okay. All right. So are there wholesome factors involved? Are there afflictions like, that's a terrible tea, I hate it. This resentment, this anger, yeah? Or, this tea is no good, I've had better. So there's arrogance, yeah? Okay, so you can check this. This is quite interesting, yeah, to help us understand our mental works. All right, so let's go back to the exercise. So we'll have show you an example of using drinking tea to look at these 5 classes of dharmas. Okay, so let's see. Do we want to do an exercise now? Yeah, let's do a 5-minute practice. So let's open up the discussion. Feel free to unmute to open up your mic. What do you want to try? Besides drinking tea, try. Somebody come up with a simple experience so we can analyze this as a class. You can write it in the chat, or you can say it. Breathing. Okay, somebody says breathing. All right, good. Greg says breathing. Let's take breathing. Good example. Does the breathing involve the form class? Not? Of course it does, right? Breathing itself is involves the body, involves what? Okay, this is too easy. It involves the nose. Okay, so obviously breathing itself is a physical exercise or physical action, so it involves the form dharmas. But you can look at what other forms. Does it involve eyes? Does it involve ears? Does it involve tongue? Maybe not. Okay. Does it involve the air? It involves the air. So air is the sense object of what? You cannot see air. You cannot hear. Well, when there's breeze, you can hear, right? But as the air goes through your nose, you may or may not hear a little bit of sound, but you can feel the flow. So it becomes a sense object of the nose, interestingly. Okay, so there's a form class. Does the breathing involve time? Yeah, involves time, right? So you think, okay, I'm breathing slowly, I'm breathing fast, I want to breathe, I want to practice mindfulness of breathing for 10 minutes. So there's involved time, the concept of time. So that's the fourth class, yeah? Does it involve the 8 kinds of consciousness? Does it involve the eyes? Yes? No? Okay, those of you, I don't see, turn on your camera. There's only a few people are turning on your camera. You're all feeling very private. All right, so let's see who's around. Yeah, I haven't seen you for a few months. Show your face. Don't be shy. Okay, you can either open your microphone to talk, or you can nod, or make a gesture or something. All right. So does it involve your eyes? Doesn't necessarily. It doesn't need to involve your eyes, right? Even if you use your eyes, you cannot really see very much. Does it involve your ears? Probably not. Nose for sure. Yeah, nose for sure. What about your tongue? Probably not. Your body? Yes. In what way does it involve your body? Does breathing involve your body? Which part of your body? I may need to open it. You can write in the chat as well. Lung, yes, definitely involves your lung. What else besides your lung? Come on, you know this. There's more. Stomach? Yeah, it involves your belly. Not necessarily stomach. Diaphragm. Yes, diaphragm. Very good. Brain involves your. How does it involve your brain? Does it involve your brain? Yes? No? Does it involve your brain? Yes. Involves your brain. Well, why do we breathe? You know why we breathe, right? We breathe because we need oxygen. Why do we need oxygen? Because every part of our body needs the oxygen, right? The oxygen is carried by what? By what? Blood. Yes, it's carried by blood. So the blood carries the oxygen to what? To all parts of your body, because your cells need energy, and in order to make energy, it needs the oxygen as a way to make energy. Yeah, without energy, your cells would die. So you would die pretty soon without the oxygen carried by the blood. So actually, breathing involves every part of your body, right? Eventually. So this is called interdependence. See how a simple thing like breathe, we only think about nose usually, or lung, but then if we think more deeply, it involves actually a whole lot of your body, although not so visible, right? But it does. Every single part. All right, that's good. That's good. In many disciplines, proper posture is needed for optimal breathing. Proper posture in turn requires involvement of the entire body. Okay, that's very good. We have a Kung Fu teacher here making note of the importance of the posture. So let's sit in a good posture right now. Sometimes Shifu forgets and I begin to slouch. Okay, so good posture. So good posture helps with breathing too. Helps especially with deep breathing, which is even better. Yeah, deep breathing. Another thing about breathing is that try to stand under a big tree to breathe more of the oxygen. Yeah, more of the fresh air. So try in your living environment, try to find a place that you can go to that has a lot of trees. Shifu currently is living, I returned to the Prajna Forest Monastery in Ben Lomond, which is about half an hour away from Santa Cruz. This is in the redwood forest. So I have a lot of oxygen if I remember to go out. Instead of sitting in front of the computer talking to you guys. All right, so yes, I do get access to the trees very easily. Hopefully you can make that happen for yourself too. Okay. All right, so breathing, by looking at breathing mindfully, we realize that breathing is, the more we look at it, the more we realize that breathing is such an important thing. And yet we overlook sometimes. We could spend all day in a room, inside a building, without realizing what kind of quality of air that we're breathing in. Obviously, the better quality the air, the better for your health it is, right? So let's think about making an effort to have access to some good air every day, yeah, because it directly affects your body in some ways, right? Okay, good. So 8 consciousness, nose primarily, body, yeah. And what about the 6th consciousness? Well, when we're not paying attention to breathing, we know that the body can breathe by itself. It doesn't stop breathing. So it may not involve 6th consciousness directly. When you are practicing mindfulness of breathing, it does then. It does involve the 6th consciousness, right? You want to keep your attention on the breathing, so there's attention, right? And there's concentration. So look into the 51 factors, which ones are involved in mindfulness of breathing and which one are not involved. Okay, so that's a way to help get familiar with your mind and its functions. Okay, so that is a exercise to help us become a little more familiar with the 5 classes. Okay, let's see. Let us look at the next question. Okay, why are we doing this current exercise? So like drinking tea or breathing? Because this is the beginning part of so-called deconstructing the self. This is the beginning of getting to understand who we are, who we really are, who am I, by beginning to look at the parts, okay? And it will lead to something important. Let's look at number 4, the 4th question. The king and minister's reflection. Consider the mind king as the subjective foundation of your current experience. Identify which ministers, mental factors are currently active and associated with which of the 6 consciousness. So this is like the previous exercise. For example, right now I'm speaking and you are listening. You're interacting with Shifu, right? This is the interactive part of the class. Now, when I'm speaking, if I reflect on the consciousness and its involvement with the mental factors, they're probably slightly different from your activation of these mental factors, right? So for me, the 6th consciousness is the most important thing. I need to constantly be aware of where I am, what I'm talking about, so that it makes sense to you. And I also use my eyes and my ears, although you guys haven't been very talkative. So I'm mainly using my eyes as well to do the interaction part, right? And looking at the notes. So I'm activating a subset of the wholesome factors, because as I'm teaching, I want to teach in a way that you can understand better, so that we can help all of us, both me and all of you, to make progress on understanding ourselves. So that's the wholesome factor. So teaching a class is mostly wholesome, creating good karma. Yeah. Now you as the student, as the audience, you are probably using the 6th consciousness too, right? So, but you are, unless you're dozing off. Anybody dozed off already? In deep sleep already? In which case you're not using your 6th consciousness. But otherwise, your 6th consciousness is also the key, the king right now. And what kind of mental factors is calling up? Okay, so now the question number 4 is something that you can use every once in a while. So we say, let's be mindful, let's be more mindful throughout the day. So that's one way to practice being mindful. So just whatever you're doing, stop for a moment and reflect on what is going on in my mind right now. What is my consciousness doing? What kind of mental states, mental factors do I have is in my mind right now? Are they still here? How long have they been around? For a few seconds, for a splitting second, or for a few minutes already? Yeah, it's one way to be mindful. Now, in this mindfulness practice, you are making note of the states of your mind without judgment, right? So you know that they are wholesome or unwholesome or universal or specific. But either one, or no matter what they are, you're just observing rather than feeling good that you're having these thoughts or feeling bad you're having thoughts you shouldn't be having. We stop judging ourselves, but begin to simply observe ourselves. And that's important. That's important for keeping a calm mind. All right, number 5, storehouse consciousness. This is an interesting thing to think about. If there's an alaya vijnana, which is the storehouse consciousness, as a vast depository of our past experiences, what influence and significance would it have? What does this mean? If you can actually, all of your past experience is somewhere in your mind, in your corner of your mind somewhere. What does that actually mean? What does it mean in terms of my memory? Why am I having a poor memory, or why do I have a really good memory? Is it possible to improve my memory? It would definitely be possible, right? If you know how to access your warehouse. What other implications are there? What implication is there regarding the consequences of our past? There are consequences, right? There are consequences. Just because I forgot doesn't mean there is no consequence. Yeah, so the we call it a karma seed. Your past experience are the seed, a karma seed, and as time goes on, as you continue to do things, as your life unfold, some of these seed will sprout in the right condition, and it will bear fruit or the consequence of your action, whether they are wholesome or unwholesome. That's the important function of your storehouse consciousness. Explains the karma consequences. All right, number 6. Write down in your cultivation journal what you feel are the important points from this first class from memory. What have we learned today? Okay, let us pause for about 3 minutes. Let's just pause for a few minutes, and without looking at any notes, just use your mind to try to remember what we talked about today. This is important for retaining what you learn, is to remember. So let us, while the memory is still fresh, what do you remember from today's class? Can you bring up 3 important points? Now, go ahead and write into the chat box, if you wish, what are some of the important things some of the things that you think that's important. So let's share with each other. Let's look at the chat box. What do you think, any point, anything that you think was important to you? Okay, first is that 91 dharmas are from inside our minds, only 11 are from the outside world. So you mean 89, right? 89 dharmas are from inside our mind, only 10, actually 90, because the 11th mental factor is still inside your mind. Okay, good. So, well, see, this is interesting because if you use modern science, there are millions and millions of species, right? And we have relatively few names for states of our mind, maybe within 100 or maybe a couple hundred. So you see, it's not that who is right or who is wrong, it's the emphasis. So in Western science, because the physical world is something we can measure, or we can get our hands on, so we choose to study the easier part. So we have huge amount of information about the physical world. Buddhism doesn't take the easy way because the consciousness, the mind is important. So we spend a huge amount of energy on studying the mind. Okay, that's why we have 90 or 89, okay? All right, so it reflects the what you focus on, rather than there's no actual definite set of dharmas, right? Oh, one thing I should say, when we say all dharmas are summarized into 5 classes, that means this is one way we can set up the system. This is not the only way. There are different ways to set up the system to study the world, right? So summarize means that we Vasubandhu choose to use 5 classes and 8 types of consciousness, but the number could be different. The number could be, instead of 51 mental factors, you can have 100, 200, 600 if you want. But for the purpose of our practice, for the purpose of studying toward enlightenment, these are enough. That's what we mean by summarize, okay? comprise of 51 mental factors. That means this is not an exhaustive list, but this is a useful list. All right, so that's the first thing. Let's see what else. The importance of the 6th consciousness, the mana and the alaya. Okay, so we haven't talked very much about the mana, 7th and the 8th, a little bit, okay? But still, you can think about it. So yes, of the 8 types of consciousness, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th are the most important. They directly involve in the quality of our life and our future. Okay? Okay, another person said, I did not use my math consciousness. LOL. You choose not to use it, right? You choose not to activate it. All right. Okay. This is it's interesting that in America, especially, a lot of people like to say, oh, I can't do math. Whereas in the Chinese culture, you rarely hear people do that. Whether they can do it or not, they don't talk about it as something they're proud of. Whereas I heard so many people in America say, oh, I can't do math. So it's a difference of culture, right? It's culture difference. This is a practical method to analyze our own mind, and we must do so without judgment of our own mind. Yes, So if we just say, let's try to understand ourselves. This is a perennial question. Who am I? And who am I? Well, so some people answer this question by studying the physical body. But most philosophers, would choose to study our mind. And now this is one way, Plato probably has his own way of studying the mind, and other philosophers, Taoists have their different way. The Buddhists or Yogacara have this specific way. Now this make it very systematic. This becomes a way that anybody can learn and approach to try to understand yourself. Okay, so this is a practical method, and we must do so without judgment of our mind. We so easily judge people or things, experiences. Almost every single one of our experiences, we attach a judgment. So let's learn not to judge. Well, it's not that judgment is always bad. A lot of times we need to make proper judgment, but a lot of times there's no need for judgment, but there's more need to observe and understand what's really going on first, right? That includes ourselves. If you often feel bad about yourself, then you are making a lot of judgment to yourself. So quite a portion of the people do that. If you look down on other people a lot, then you're making a lot of judgment toward other people. So this analysis, this system also help us identify the feelings, the mental states, and so on. We try to do that without judgment. It's not like, okay, my wife, of course I don't have a wife, just an example. My wife always has these 20 afflictions or the 6 primary afflictions. See, now I understand who you really are. When you say that, you're making a judgment, right? Can we do this? Can we identify these mental states without attach a good or bad judgment? The purpose is to understand, because if you look at every single affliction or unwholesome mental state that other people have, you look back into yourself, you probably have it too. You most likely have it too. So let's refrain from making a judgment. Okay. Another point is that everything you do matters. Everything you do does matter in a big or small way. The order of the 5 classes is logical. It's important to list them this way as a map for navigating our mind. Yes, so there's a very definite reason through careful thinking that Vasubandhu listed these 5 classes this way. Okay? And I think earlier there was a question saying, why is the form Dharma in the 3rd class? What do you think? Why is the form Dharma in the 3rd class? Well, it makes sense that the consciousness is the 1st class because they're the most important. And then naturally, you talk about the mental states, the ministers, they call up, right? So the 1st and the 2nd class are pretty natural. And the 3rd is the physical world, the Dharma associated with the physical world. I think it makes sense. Do you think it makes sense? Because, we need to deal with the world. And only when we list out the first 3 can we talk about the 4th class, right? Because fourth class is a combination. It's a concept created. These are concepts created based on our first 3 classes. And the 5th class is there because it can be revealed by the 4 classes. Okay. All right, the next comment, form is projected by mind-consciousness. Yes, that's a very important point, and we haven't really explained that. Okay, so actually to explain this in a really detailed way, I think is the most important, one of the most interesting thing in the Yogacara philosophy. Unfortunately, to do justice explaining this, that form, that the external world is a projection of our mind, it will take a lot more study in the Yogacara school. Okay, but they do have a very, very wonderful explanation. All right, how Shifu transform abstract terminology into practical guidance for daily life. Oh, thank you for saying that, because I do think a lot about how to make these quite academic thing into something practical. Okay. Okay, so somebody said the exercise of deconstructing, breathing, and drinking tea is very helpful. Good. So now you want to do yourself, right? Without Shifu's help. Take something simple and do this exercise yourself. All right, next comment. Being more aware of the 100 Dharmas will help us reveal our true nature. Yes. And penetrate the concepts of self and non-self. All right. So the first 4 classes are all associated with the self. My mind, my consciousness, my mental state, my ideas, my concept, my experience of time and space and gain and loss and birth and death and so on. Right. They are all associated with myself. So it's interesting that by really understand more clearly these 90 dharmas, these 94 dharmas, that will actually come to the conclusion of no self or no permanent self-identity. Okay? Next, our karma is determined by how we earn money and what intention we spend the money towards. Okay, so as an example, creating karma, money is probably one of the most influential karma maker or karma agent, right? Good and bad karma agent. So how you make your money is important. That involved in creating good or bad karma. How you spend your money, how you use your money, also can be involved in making good or bad karma. It could also be neutral karma, right? If you just do things by the book, following the law, and then neither you don't think about it much, you're just a good citizen, you're not really creating bad karma, not really creating great karma either, maybe a little bit of good karma by making money. And if you just spend it on regular things like food and clothing and traveling once in a while, it's not really good or bad karma, right? But if you get very attached to that money, or if you're very concerned with, you think a lot about how you use this money in a good way to contribute, to help other people, to help people in my family, to make people happy, then that's a totally different story, right? Okay, next comment. By dissecting ourselves and outside world into pieces of concepts will help us to truly understand what's void of self. Yes. So remember the last line in the 100 Dharma is, what is devoid of self? There are 2 types. The person is devoid of self. That means no person. The idea of a persistent person is delusion. Now, don't be afraid of that. It's actually the most interesting thing about the Buddhist teaching. And also the dharmas are devoid of the self. Phenomena. All phenomena in the world have no persistent identity. Okay? All right, finally, understanding the dharmas help us to be free from suffering. Yes, it will help us to free ourselves from the unpleasant experiences, not by changing the world per se, but by changing our perspective and the way we react. Okay, so that is the first class. Next week, we'll begin to look at the 8 types of consciousness, the first class, in more detail. Okay? And can we, the host, can we put up the QR code for the WhatsApp group? 传开请把那个 QR code 放上来吧，或者是传键啊。Can our TA do that? So we do have a way to interact on WhatsApp. We have a Prajna Dharma group, a Prajna Dharma account, and we also set up a group called 100 Dharmas. So any 100 Dharma specific question or things you want to discuss, you can put it in there. And Shifu hopefully will interact with you when I have time. Any general questions about the Buddhist teaching, you can also put it in the general group. 那个谁host 能不能把刚才那个 WhatsApp 的 QR code 放上来？
有，师傅有放上来。
有放了吗？
对。
Okay, you guys can see it? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so if you haven't joined, do join. We started this last year, but we haven't really interacted with it previously, so hopefully we'll begin to interact. All right, so let us conclude the class with a dedication. What is the dedication? Is to, because of participating in this class, we have created good karma already. So let us share the good karma with others. That's the idea of the dedication. Let's put our palms together. With the good karma we have created from being mindful in listening, studying, reflecting, and sharing the 100 Dharma teaching in this class, we have created wonderful karma, and would like to dedicate the karma to all of you participating in the class, whether in Zoom or on YouTube or other forms. And we also like to dedicate the merits to all sentient beings, all people, all sentient beings, every corner of the world. May they bring you blessing, help you overcome the hardship in life. May they bring you health, and may the good karma facilitate kindness, compassion, and wisdom, so as to make peace more possible everywhere in the world.
阿弥陀佛。
Okay, we'll see you next week, same time. Remember to put down a few words in your cultivation journal. Take care.
Arms together. We thank Jiahhu Shifu with 3 half bows.
1 half bow to the Buddha.
阿弥陀佛。
Okay, see you all next time.